The kitchen is usually a place where great meals satisfy hearty appetites. Tonight's couple takes a slightly different path. Now please remember, these are trained professionals. Don't try this at home. They had a satisfactory sex life, but every now and then she would get a little frisky and want to do something a little out of the ordinary. They had long since passed the stage of mock bondage on the sex sheets, the pickup at an out-of-the-way bar pretending to be strangers, her wearing a wig pretending to be her own sister, and him pretending to be a college professor tutoring a difficult student. It had been a while, and she was once again in the mood for something a little offbeat. She set the stage carefully. It was very rare, but it was a visitation weekend when both their children were with their respective exes. After dropping her child off at the rendezvous point, she decided to stop at Boston Market for dinner, as this was crucial to her plan. She enjoyed the turkey while he wolfed down his favorite meatloaf. The paper plates and scraps were discarded in the trash, requiring no cleanup time in the kitchen. Her husband suspected something was going on, but decided that this was her scene, so he would let her play it out. She suggested they take a shower just to relax and watch some TV or listen to music or something. They showered together, something they had done from time to time. She lathered her hands with the Olay Ribbons body wash and proceeded to wash his back, starting with his neck and shoulders, down his strong back to the tip of the curve of his buttocks. She knelt behind him and started soaping his legs as he spread them, allowing her to work her magic. She went all the way to his feet, then asked him to turn around. Now this is going to be fun, he thought to himself. He braced himself against the shower wall as she slid her soapy hands up his calves and thighs, anxiously awaiting her special touch in that special place. She teased him by skipping over his lightsaber and sliding over his stomach up to his chest. Though not as fit as he used to be, he was not in bad shape. Even though he still thought of himself as possessing the athletic physique of a high school jock, she knew better and loved him anyway. She put the scrunchie in his hand to allow him to wash her, but every time he wanted to stimulate her erogenous zones, she playfully pushed his hands away to less dangerous territory. She quickly finished washing and rinsing herself and jumped out of the shower, grabbing her Canon cotton bath sheet and quickly disappearing into the master bedroom. He stood there for a moment, shocked that she would leave him frustrated like that. He continued soaping up, paying a little more attention to his stiffened shaft, absently stroking it while wondering what was going on. Just as he finished rinsing off, he heard the chirp of his Verizon phone. He figured it was someone from work interrupting his weekend, and he was quickly losing the mood as he strode across the recently installed Burlington carpet to check. When he saw the display, he was puzzled because it was from his wife's phone and she was nowhere to be seen. He answered and she said, "Can you meet me in the kitchen right away?" and hung up without waiting for an answer. He quickly donned a pair of Hanes comfort briefs and his Burberry bathrobe and hurried downstairs to find what was going on. He could not believe what he saw. His wife was lying perched on the kitchen island, lying on her side on the towel with a can of Reddi-wip in her hand. As he stood there in amazement, she placed the nozzle in her mouth and dispensed a mouthful of rapidly expanding cream. She then sprayed a spiral around her breast, ending with a large spot directly on the nipple. She looked him in the eye and said, "As I recall, you didn't have dessert." She extended the can in his direction, offering it and herself to him. He couldn't get to her fast enough. First, he kissed her mouth, tasting the sweet cream along with the warmth of her tongue. They battled to see who could get the most cream, and he really didn't care who won this one. He took the can and placed it on the counter as she rolled over onto her back. He could see why he loved her so much. But now he was part of the game. He stepped over to the refrigerator and quickly scanned it, finding something interesting. What else could go with whipped cream but Hershey's chocolate fudge? He dipped his finger into the canister and scooped out a chocolate glob. He held it over her mouth and almost let it drip onto her waiting tongue, but instead quickly moved it down her neck and between her breasts. Since one breast already had whipped cream, the other one would get the fudge, he decided, ending with his finger smearing the last of it directly on her nipple, watching it harden. Whether from the cold fudge or the excitement of the moment, he wasn't sure. He suddenly engulfed her fudge-covered nipple with his mouth. Licking the sweet substance off her slightly salty skin, he could feel the hard nipple with his tongue, and he set about removing every drop of chocolate from it, alternately using his broad, flat tongue and then flicking her nipple with his tongue tensed into a point. He did not neglect the other one, performing the same maneuvers almost in mirror image. With her fingers entwined in his hair, she allowed herself to take the pleasure he was giving. Suddenly, he stopped and looked into her eyes, and they both knew they were enjoying this. He helped her off the counter, and they both went to the still-opened refrigerator. She pushed the robe off his shoulders and pulled his briefs off, so they stood there as Adam and Eve, about to engage in the naughtiest thing they could think of. He laid her down on his robe. It could be washed later. As he retrieved the Sue Bee honey bottle, she suspected where this was going and offered herself to him. As she was starting to resemble a Leroy Neiman print, he decided to go with that. He drizzled the honey on her stomach, drawing a trail between her spread thighs. He then reached into the fridge and got the open can of Del Monte clean peaches. He removed one slice and dangled it over her mouth, slowly letting the juice drip between her opened lips. Slowly, the peach slice was lowered as she wrapped her lips around it, sucking its essence as he slid it in and out of her mouth in a none too subtle invitation. He released it and let her savor and swallow it, letting her dip her fingers into the can to coat them with the sweet syrup. She then ran her fingers over her breasts and stomach, tracing intricate, delicious patterns. At the same time, he retrieved another slice and slid it between her other lips, surprising her with the sudden cold against her sensitive bud. It slid between her labia, coating her with its juices, which dripped down over her tight, tiny rose before dripping onto her husband's robe. He told her, "I'm not going to let this go to waste." He knelt between her thighs, gently pushing her knees up toward her chest and outward. He began slowly licking her thighs down toward her sweet, soaked treasure. She knew what was coming and loved this part. He reached her beautifully trimmed mound and licked up the trail of honey toward her belly button before retracing the path to her pleasure center. "Do it. Now, please," she pleaded. A. B. C. As she called out each letter, she could feel his tongue tracing the alphabet on her lips, up, down, across, semicircles. She determined the pace, and usually made it all the way to Z. But this was such a unique experience, she didn't know if she would make it. As he traced E, up the side, across the bottom, across the middle, and then across the tongue. He added a flourish and flicked his tongue rapidly, and she could feel herself starting to let go. He did it again on F. It was too much for her. The rapid tongue movement caused her to release her passions with a moan that she had to muffle with her own hands. He wanted to continue her peak, so he reached into the meat drawer and got a Wilshire fine smoked sausage. He got up and quickly wrapped it in saran wrap. He then slowly slid the large piece of meat between her still quivering lips, teasing her, sliding it slowly from the bottom to the top, gently parting her pearly gates before slowly entering her. Though the size comparison should have caused him a twinge of jealousy, he was excited to see her reaction. She raised her head to look and see what was happening. As her eyes rolled back in her head, she could not describe the feeling, but she liked it. Knowing he may never have a chance like this again, he tried something totally impossible during their normal sexual play. He wrapped his lips around her stiff clitoris and began an in and out, twisting back and forth, making crop circle motions inside her. She was ecstatic. Arching her back and raising her hips, she tried to get as much of this feeling as she could, her hands clenching the robe beneath her. She wanted more. She pushed his head out of the way and took control of the massive sausage invading her. He watched in disbelief as she began to thrust and manipulate the sausage in ways his own efforts could never duplicate. He quickly grabbed some Wesson oil, poured it in his hands, and proceeded to massage her breasts, shoulders, neck, and torso. By the glow of the refrigerator, she was a shiny, sexy, wanton woman. She began to feel the power inside her as his hand made contact with her clitoris. Once again, rolling it between his fingers, she came again, even stronger. As she slowly returned to normal, he poured them both a glass of turning leaf Chablis. Between sips and kisses, they laughed and smiled about what had just happened. She suddenly got quiet and asked if he would like to try something for her. Well, of course, he replied. She told him to lie down on the robe that now had half the contents of the refrigerator on it, but could be thrown into the Maytag when they were done. She got the Bertolli extra virgin olive oil and began to massage his body. Starting at his back and shoulders, she mimicked the moves she had started in the shower. When she got to his buttocks, she poured the oil over them and massaged his cheeks thoroughly. She started on his legs, and he spread them without being asked so she could do a thorough job. All the way to his feet, she continued these ministrations. She then lightly raked her nails from his ankles to his shoulders and watched the goosebumps appear. Unseen by him, she also retrieved something from the meat drawer. "Honey, raise up on your knees so I can reach the front, okay?" she asked, oh, so sweetly. Loving what she was doing, he complied. Reaching between his legs, she slid her oil-covered hand up and down the shaft. She poured more oil over his buttocks, allowing it to run down and coat him even more and become even more slippery. His breathing increased as his moans showed his acceptance. She repositioned herself so her breast slid along his slick back. She reached around to caress him once again, sliding her hand along his hard, slick shaft. He suddenly felt pressure in an unfamiliar place. She felt him tense up and gently whispered in his ear, "Shh, shh, shh. It's okay, honey. It's okay." Although it was only a ballpark prank, he thought it was the smoked sausage and panicked momentarily. While continuing to stroke him and kiss and nibble on his back, she took control and slid the hot dog into his previously virgin opening. Though he wanted to protest, she could tell that he was more excited than he had been in years. With almost half of it inside him, she increased the tempo of both her stroking and her plunging. Kneeling behind him, she felt a sense of power like never before. It felt like she was the man. "Take it all, bitch," she hissed, reveling in this part of her game. She could tell the hot dog must be stimulating his prostate, and she could tell he was about to erupt. She quickly removed the hot dog, rolled him onto his back, and began a furious two-handed stroking, cheering him on, saying, "Do it, baby. Do it for me. Say my name." Which caused him to suddenly explode with fury and volume as if he had not come in a year, coating her hands with his warm essence. Quickly grabbing the ready whip, she sprayed it all over his quickly wilting penis, pouring the remainder of the fudge on also. She looked him in the eye and said, "You know what this was missing before? Nuts." As she engulfed him with her mouth, tasting him, the chocolate and the cream, she offered him a taste and they kissed passionately and tenderly, embracing each other as they just enjoyed each other's company. After a few minutes, he helped her up, surveying the damage, and thought to himself, "Our grocery bill is going to be pretty big at Sam's Club tomorrow." As they headed upstairs for another shower, he wrapped his arm around her waist and playfully asked her, "I bet you have no idea what I can do with Craftsman power tools, do you?" Oh well, let's hear it for those with wild imaginations. Join us next time for another episode of Damon Kent's Darker Desires. As always, you can download a copy of Rush Hour Romances at cdbaby.com/Damon Kent or amazon.com. Let me know what you think at mrdamonkentromance.com. And until next time, bon appetit.